Javaria glittered like a vast, crystalline jewel against the black canvas of space. From orbit, its sprawling cities resembled veins of silver spreading across emerald continents. The central hub, the Imperial Palace, a blinding pinpoint of light at the heart of the Eastern Hemisphere. This was the core of the Zorak Empire, a civilization that had conquered 17 star systems over 3 centuries, leaving shattered planets and subjugated species in their wake. Inside the Imperial Palace, in a forgotten wing where servants rarely ventured, Zayela sat alone by a window that overlooked the capital city. Her slender fingers traced patterns on the glass as her amber eyes followed the movement of vessels soaring through the lavender sky. The room around her, spacious and adorned with the finest silks and treasures from conquered worlds, felt more like a prison than a sanctuary. Her hover chair, a technological marvel equipped with neural interfaces and anti-gravity propulsion, sat deactivated beside her conventional wheeled chair. Born to High Counselor Vren, one of the 12 rulers of the Zorak Empire, Zayela should have been among the most envied beings in the galaxy. Instead, she was its most pitied secret. The accident that had severed her spinal connection 15 years ago, when she was barely 6, had transformed her from cherished princess to shameful burden overnight. In a culture that prized physical perfection and martial prowess above all else, her paralyzed legs rendered her worthless. "Useless," her father had whispered once, when he thought she couldn't hear. "A pity she survived it all." Zayela's fingers paused on the window. In the distance, beyond the spires of the Imperial City, a new vessel was descending through the atmosphere. Unlike the sleek, predatory shapes of Zorak ships, this one was bulkier, with rounded edges and the unmistakable insignia of Earth Alliance emblazoned on its hull. The diplomatic vessel from Earth, the newest, most troublesome addition to the galactic political stage, had arrived for the peace talks. She watched with detached curiosity. Earth and its colonies had resisted Zorak expansion in ways no other civilization had managed, forcing the Empire to consider diplomatic solutions rather than conquest. It was unprecedented and deeply humiliating for the warrior culture of Javaria. "Lady Zayela," the voice came from the doorway, where a servant bowed low, avoiding her eyes as all servants did. "The High Council summons you to the Grand Chamber." Zayela's heart stuttered. In 15 years, she had never been summoned to a council meeting. Her father had deemed her presence an embarrassment, an affront to the dignity of Zorak leadership. "When?" she asked, her voice hoarse from disuse. "Immediately, my lady." With practiced movements, Zayela transferred herself to her wheeled chair, ignoring the hover device. The neural interfaces caused her pain, and she preferred the ancient, manual transportation when possible. The servant did not offer to help. Touching the daughter of a high counselor without permission was punishable by death, regardless of her status as a defective. The journey through the palace corridors was long. Zayela felt the stares of nobles and warriors, heard their whispers as she passed. Her pale blue skin, marked with the luminescent patterns that identified her royal lineage, seemed to glow more intensely under their scrutiny. Her silver hair, braided elaborately in the style of Javarian nobility, caught the light from crystal chandeliers overhead. The grand chamber doors, 20 feet tall and carved from the bones of an extinct spacefaring creature, swung open at her approach. Inside, the circular room buzzed with tension. The 12 high counselors sat on elevated thrones, and below them, a delegation of humans stood in formal attire. Zayela's gaze immediately fell on one human in particular, a tall male with skin the color of Javarian sand and close-cropped dark hair. Unlike his companions, who wore the formal blue and gold of Earth Diplomatic Corps, this human was dressed in the silver-gray uniform of Earth Alliance Military Command. 4 silver stars on his collar identified him as a high-ranking officer. He stood straight-backed and alert, his eyes, a startling shade of green, surveying the room with calm intelligence. "Approach, daughter." High Counselor Vren's voice boomed across the chamber. Zayela wheeled herself forward, acutely aware of the human delegation's curious stares. She positioned herself in the center of the room, directly between the High Council and the Earth representatives. "Esteemed delegates of Earth," Vren continued, his voice carrying the artificial warmth of practiced diplomacy. "As a symbol of Zorak's commitment to lasting peace between our civilizations, we offer a gift of tremendous value." Zayela's stomach tightened. Something about her father's tone made her skin crawl. "My daughter, Zayela, direct descendant of Emperor Zorak himself, shall be given to Commander Jack Morgan as a companion and cultural liaison." The words hit Zayela like a physical blow. She had been summoned not as a daughter or even as a representative of her people, but as an object to be given away. Her fingers gripped the arms of her chair so tightly that her knuckles turned white. The human commander, Jack Morgan, stepped forward, his expression carefully neutral, but with a muscle twitching in his jaw. "High Counselor Vren," he said, his voice deep and measured. "Earth Alliance deeply appreciates the gesture. However, in our culture, sentient beings are not given as gifts. They make their own choices." A murmur rippled through the Zorak Council. Vren's expression darkened. "Commander Morgan, perhaps you misunderstand. My daughter's condition renders her unable to contribute to Zorak society in traditional ways. By offering her to your delegation, we provide her an opportunity to serve the Empire diplomatically. It is an honor." Jack's eyes met Zayela's for the first time, and she felt something unfamiliar stir within her, something she had thought long dead. It was neither pity nor disgust that filled his gaze, but quiet rage on her behalf. "With all due respect," Jack said, turning back to Vren, "I believe the lady should speak for herself." The chamber fell silent. No one had asked for Zayela's opinion in years, let alone in matters of state. Her father's face contorted with fury. "Commander," he spat, "you insult our customs. Zayela is my property to bestow as I see fit. This is non-negotiable if Earth wishes peace with Zorak." Jack's shoulders tensed visibly beneath his uniform. For a moment, Zayela thought he might abandon the entire diplomatic mission over this unexpected complication. Instead, he did something that would change the course of two civilizations. He walked to Zayela and knelt beside her chair, bringing himself to eye level with her. "Lady Zayela," he said quietly, though his voice carried in the silent chamber, "would you like to accompany the Earth delegation as our honored guest? Not as property, but as a person with your own desires and rights?" The chamber erupted in outrage. High counselors rose from their thrones, shouting about insolence and disrespect. Guards stepped forward, hands on weapons. But Jack remained kneeling, his eyes locked with Zayela's, waiting for her answer. 15 years of silence and shame pressed down on Zayela like a physical weight. She had long ago accepted her fate as the forgotten embarrassment of House Vren. Yet, here was this stranger, this human, offering her something no one on her homeworld ever had: dignity. "Yes," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the chaos. Then, louder, "Yes." Jack stood and faced the council. "Lady Zayela has accepted our invitation. As a diplomatic representative of Earth Alliance, I invoke the Galactic Convention's Article 7 regarding asylum and personal autonomy. Any attempt to prevent Lady Zayela from leaving freely will be considered an act of aggression against Earth." The legal maneuver silenced the chamber. The Galactic Convention was the one set of laws the Zorak Empire had been forced to acknowledge after their last failed conquest. Violating it now would give the other galactic powers cause to unite against them, something even the mighty Zorak could not withstand. High Counselor Vren's face was a mask of cold fury. "Take her then," he said at last. "But know this, Commander Morgan, what Zorak gives It can also reclaim. My daughter carries the blood of emperors. She will not be abandoned among aliens forever. Zayela felt a chill at the threat underlying her father's words. But as Jack positioned himself behind her chair and began to wheel her from the chamber, a sensation she had nearly forgotten blossomed in her chest. Hope. The Earth Alliance vessel Horizon hung in low orbit above Javaria, its massive hull dwarfing the Zorak escort ships that surrounded it, like suspicious predators circling prey. Inside, Zayela sat motionless in her new quarters, staring at surroundings entirely foreign to her experience. Unlike the cold, angular designs of Javarian architecture, the cabin was curved and ergonomic. The lighting was softer, adjusted to a spectrum that mimicked Earth's sun, rather than Javaria's harsh blue-white glare. The temperature was warmer than she was accustomed to, but not unpleasantly so. Most startling of all was the bed, not the suspension field Zorakians preferred, but a physical structure with what humans called blankets and pillows. Across the room, a large viewport revealed the swirling blue-green surface of her homeworld. It looked beautiful from a distance, like all dangerous things. The door chimed softly, pulling Zayela from her thoughts. "Enter," she said, her voice still rough from years of minimal use. Commander Jack Morgan stepped inside, no longer wearing his formal uniform, but a simpler black and gray duty outfit. He carried a tray of food, strange-looking items with unfamiliar colors and textures. "I thought you might be hungry," he said, setting the tray on a small table near her chair. "Our nutritionists analyzed Javarian dietary requirements and synthesized compatible options." Zayela regarded the food with suspicion. "Why are you doing this?" Jack pulled up a chair and sat across from her, not too close, respecting her space. "Doing what? Feeding our guest?" "Treating me like—" She struggled to find the right words. "Like I matter." Something flashed across Jack's face. Anger, perhaps, but not directed at her. "Because you do matter, Lady Zayela. Every sentient being matters." She almost laughed at the naivety of it. "You know nothing of Zorak culture, Commander. Weakness is despised. Disability is failure." "I know enough," Jack replied quietly. "I've studied your people for 5 years in preparation for this mission. I know Emperor Zorak established the purification laws 3 centuries ago, mandating that defective children be exposed to the elements. I know those laws were technically abolished 60 years ago, but the cultural stigma remains." He leaned forward slightly. "And I know that what happened to you wasn't your fault." Zayela looked away, uncomfortable with his directness. "What happened to me is irrelevant. I am what I am, useless to the Empire." "Maybe to the Empire," Jack said, "but not to yourself, and not to me." She turned back to him, searching his face for signs of deception or pity. She found neither. "What use could I possibly be to Earth Alliance?" Jack smiled slightly. "Who said anything about use? You're not cargo, Lady Zayela. You're a person. That's reason enough to care about your well-being." The concept was so foreign that Zayela had no response. In silence, she reached for one of the food items, a purple-tinted cube that smelled faintly of Javarian sea fruit. The taste was not quite right, but close enough to be comforting. "It's acceptable," she said formally, falling back on the rigid etiquette of her upbringing. Jack's smile widened. "High praise. I'll tell the kitchen staff." A moment of awkward silence stretched between them before Jack spoke again. "We'll be departing Javarian orbit in approximately 6 hours. Earth Alliance Command has approved your stay aboard Horizon for the duration of our diplomatic mission, which should last about 3 Earth months." "And then?" Zayela asked, unable to keep the anxiety from her voice. "And then you decide what you want. Asylum on Earth or any of its colonies is guaranteed. Or, if you prefer, we can arrange settlement on any neutral world in the galactic community." The vastness of these options overwhelmed her. For 15 years, Her world had been confined to a few rooms in the Imperial Palace. Now, suddenly, an entire galaxy of possibilities lay before her. "I don't know how to choose," she admitted. "You don't have to decide now," Jack assured her. "You have time." He hesitated before adding, "Lady Zayela, there's someone else I'd like you to meet. Would that be acceptable?" Zayela nodded cautiously. Jack tapped a communication device on his wrist. "Dr. Arwen, you can come in now." The door slid open to reveal a human female with silver-streaked dark hair and warm brown skin. Unlike Jack's athletic build, this human was shorter and rounder, with laugh lines around her eyes that crinkled when she smiled, which she did immediately upon seeing Zayela. "Lady Zayela, this is Dr. Elaine Arwen, Horizon's Chief Medical Officer and Biotechnology Specialist." Dr. Arwen approached with a respectful nod. "It's an honor to meet you, Lady Zayela. Commander Morgan has told me about your situation." Zayela stiffened. "My situation is not open for discussion." Instead of being offended, Dr. Arwen nodded with understanding. "Of course, your medical privacy is absolutely respected. I'm not here to discuss your paralysis unless you wish to. I'm here because Commander Morgan thought you might be interested in some technology we've developed." She gestured to a large case she had brought with her. "May I?" After a moment's hesitation, Zayela nodded. Dr. Arwen opened the case to reveal what appeared to be a sleek, silvery exoskeleton designed to fit around a humanoid's lower body. "This is an adaptive mobility assistance device, what we call an exochair, unlike your Javarian hovertech, which requires neural implants. This uses non-invasive sensor pads that detect bioelectrical signals from functioning nerve pathways." She smiled warmly. "In simple terms, it responds to your thoughts without requiring painful interfaces." Zayela stared at the device, a complex mixture of emotions churning inside her. Hope, suspicion, yearning, fear, all warred for dominance. "I've managed without assistance devices for years," she said stiffly. Jack stepped forward. "You've managed admirably. Lady Zayela, this isn't about fixing something broken. It's about options, choice. The exochair is yours if you want it, and yours to refuse if you don't." The emphasis on choice, something she had been denied her entire adult life, struck Zayela deeply. She looked from Jack to Dr. Arwen, then back to the exochair. "I will consider it," she said finally. Dr. Arwen nodded, closing the case. "Take all the time you need. The chair will be here in Medical Bay whenever you're ready." She moved toward the door, then turned back. "And, Lady Zayela, whatever you decide, it's been a genuine honor meeting you. The daughter of High Counselor Vren is something of a legend among xenoanthropologists like myself." After Dr. Arwen left, Jack remained, watching Zayela with those unsettlingly direct green eyes. "What?" she finally asked, uncomfortable with his scrutiny. "Nothing," he said. "I just realized I never properly introduced myself beyond the formal diplomatic context." He gave a slight bow. "Jack Morgan, Commander, Earth Alliance Defense Force. Previously captain of the survey vessel Pathfinder, currently serving as military liaison to the diplomatic corps." His informality was jarring but somehow refreshing. "Zayela Vren, daughter of High Counselor Vren, House of Emperor Zorak," she replied automatically, then added with bitter humor, "Currently serving as political pawn and embarrassing family secret." Jack didn't laugh at her dark joke. Instead, he said quietly, "Not anymore. Now you're just Zayela, a free individual making her own choices." The words hung in the air between them, fragile and precious. Zayela found herself wanting to believe them, even as years of conditioning told her such freedom was an illusion. "I should let you rest," Jack said, moving toward the door. "Tomorrow we'll be busy as we break orbit. If you need anything, just use the communication panel by your bed." As he reached the door, Zayela called out, "Commander Morgan!" He turned back, Jack, please. Jack, she repeated, the informal name feeling strange on her tongue. Thank you. He smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his serious face into something unexpectedly warm. You're welcome, Zayella. After he left, Zayella sat in the quiet cabin, gazing out at her homeworld. For the first time in 15 years, she allowed herself to imagine a future beyond the confines of shame and isolation. It was terrifying. It was exhilarating. It was possible. Days aboard the Horizon fell into a rhythm unlike anything Zayella had known before. Her mornings began with a visit from a human physiotherapist named Mira, who helped her with exercises designed to maintain her upper body strength and prevent muscular atrophy in her legs. Though initially resistant to being touched, Zayella gradually came to appreciate the woman's professional demeanor and gentle humor. Middays were often spent in the ship's observation lounge, where Zayella could watch the stars as Horizon traveled through hyperspace. The vast emptiness soothed her in ways she couldn't articulate, perhaps because, unlike the palace on Javaria, space made everyone equally small and vulnerable. Evenings frequently brought Jack to her quarters, sometimes with food from the ship's galley, other times with stories of Earth and its colonies. He spoke of oceans and mountains, of cities built within forest canopies, of desert communities that harvested water from the air. His descriptions painted pictures of a civilization fundamentally different from the militaristic Zorak Empire, one that valued diversity and adaptation over uniformity and conquest. Your people must be weak to accept such differences, Zayella remarked one evening, 3 weeks into their journey. She immediately regretted the words, recognizing them as her father's thinking rather than her own developing perspective. Jack, however, didn't take offense. There's strength in diversity, he replied, adjusting the temperature controls as he noticed Zayella pulling a blanket around her shoulders. Earth vessels ran cooler than she preferred. Different perspectives solve problems that a single viewpoint might miss. Different physiologies adapt to environments that might kill others. He paused, considering his next words carefully. The Empire views physical variation as weakness because it built its identity around conquest. Earth nearly destroyed itself thinking that way, centuries ago. Zayella raised an eyebrow. Yet you survived. Barely, Jack admitted. And only by changing our fundamental values. We still struggle with it. Humans are no more inherently virtuous than Zorakians. But we recognize that defining worth solely through physical power or genetic uniformity nearly led to our extinction. His honesty was refreshing. Unlike the flowery propaganda of Zorak officials or the fearful deference of servants, Jack spoke to her as an equal, a concept still foreign but increasingly precious to Zayella. Tell me about your world, Jack said, changing the subject. Not the official history, but your experience of it. Zayella hesitated. No one had ever asked for her perspective before. It was beautiful, in its way, she began tentatively. Javaria has crystal forests that sing when the wind blows through them. The moons, 3 of them, create tidal patterns in the northern seas that glow with bioluminescent algae. As she spoke, memories long suppressed rose to the surface. Before my accident, my mother would take me to the floating gardens outside the capital. They hover over thermal vents, creating pockets of warm air that support entire ecosystems. Jack listened attentively, asking questions that drew out more details, more memories. Zayella found herself speaking more than she had in years, her voice growing stronger with use. Your mother, Jack said gently during a pause. You haven't mentioned her since coming aboard. Is she dead? Zayella confirmed flatly. Or as good as. She opposed my father's decision to hide me away after the accident. She believed I could still be educated, still contribute intellectually to the Empire. They fought, and then one day she was gone. Father said she had been reassigned to a diplomatic post in the outer colonies, but no messages ever came. Jack's expression darkened. I'm sorry. Zayela shrugged, the gesture an attempt at nonchalance that failed to mask the old pain. It was long ago. I learned to survive without allies. You shouldn't have had to, Jack said, his voice carrying an edge of anger. No child should. Something in his tone made Zayela look up sharply. You speak from experience. It wasn't a question, but Jack answered anyway. My parents died in the Proxima conflict when I was 7. I spent 3 years in an overcrowded refugee center on Mars, before being placed with foster parents. His mouth twisted in a wry smile. They were good people, but dealing with a traumatized, angry child wasn't what they had signed up for. Understanding bloomed between them, the recognition of shared wounds, differently inflicted, but similarly scarring. How did you move beyond it? Zayela asked, genuinely curious. Jack considered this. I'm not sure you ever fully do, but finding purpose helps. For me, it was joining Earth Alliance, not to fight, though I've done that when necessary, but to prevent others from experiencing what I did. He leaned forward. What about you, Zayela? What gives you purpose? The question struck her, like a physical blow. Purpose was a concept reserved for intact, functional Zorakians, warriors, scientists, politicians, never for the broken and hidden. I don't know, she admitted. I've never been allowed to have one. Then maybe that's your first task aboard Horizon, Jack suggested gently. Not finding a purpose exactly, but giving yourself permission to seek one. Later that night, after Jack had left, Zayela lay awake, staring at the ceiling of her cabin. Their conversation replayed in her mind, particularly his final suggestion about purpose. With sudden resolve, she activated the communication panel beside her bed. Yes, Lady Zayela, came the immediate response from the night duty officer. I wish to speak with Dr. Arwin about the exochair, she said, her heart pounding with equal parts fear and determination. Tomorrow morning, if she's available. There was a brief pause before the officer replied. Dr. Arwin says she'll be in the medical bay at 800 hours and looks forward to seeing you. Zayela terminated the communication and closed her eyes, suddenly exhausted. Whatever happened tomorrow, she had taken the first step towards something new, something chosen rather than imposed. It might be a mistake. It might lead nowhere. But for the first time in 15 years, she was moving forward by her own will. The medical bay of the Horizon was a stark contrast to the healing chambers of Javaria. Instead of the dark, womb-like enclosures where Zorakian healers practiced their arts, the human facility was bright and open, with transparent dividers separating different treatment areas. Equipment hummed softly in the background. Monitors displayed data in colorful patterns, and the air carried a faint, antiseptic scent. Dr. Arwin greeted Zayela with the same warm smile she had offered during their first meeting. Good morning, Lady Zayela. I'm glad you decided to explore the exochair option. Zayela nodded stiffly, still uncomfortable with such direct interaction. I wish to understand how it works. Of course. Dr. Arwin guided Zayela's chair to a private examination room, where the silver exoskeleton stood displayed on a support frame. The fundamental technology isn't so different from your Javarian hover chair, but our approach to the neural interface is completely different. She began explaining the technical specifications, but Zayela interrupted. The Javarian chair was painful because it forced neural connections where none existed. It felt like burning wires under my skin. Dr. Arwin's expression softened with understanding. This won't be like that. Our system doesn't try to reconnect severed neural pathways. Instead, it reads the bioelectrical signals from intact nerves and muscle groups, then amplifies and translates them into movement. She touched the inside of the exoskeleton, where thin, flexible pads lined the structure. These sensors read intention rather than trying to force function. Zayela studied the device skeptically. And the success rate? Variable, Dr. Arwin admitted honestly. It depends on the nature and extent of the paralysis, the user's neural plasticity, and how quickly the system learns to interpret your specific signals. Some users achieve full mobility within days. Others take weeks to master basic functions. A few find it doesn't work for them at all. Her candor was refreshing. Zorakian healers would never admit to such limitations. What would you need to determine if I'm a suitable candidate? Zayela asked. A basic neural mapping session, Dr. Arwin replied. Non-invasive, painless, and it takes about an hour. Based on those results, we can customize the exochair's response patterns to your specific neural architecture. Zayela hesitated. Memories of painful Zorakian treatments flooding back. Sensing her apprehension, Dr. Arwin added gently, You can stop the process at any time, and you'll be fully conscious throughout. Nothing about this is invasive or permanent. Taking a deep breath, Zayela nodded. Proceed. The neural mapping was indeed painless, merely a series of sensors placed against her skin, while a computer compiled data on her neural responses to various stimuli. As promised, Dr. Arwin explained each step before performing it, giving Zayela complete control over the process. When it was complete, Dr. Arwin studied the results with evident interest. Fascinating. Your neural architecture is remarkably adaptable, even after 15 years of paralysis. The pathways that would normally control lower limb movement have been partially repurposed for enhanced upper body function, but there's still significant baseline activity. She turned to Zayela with unconcealed excitement. Based on these readings, I believe you're an excellent candidate for the exochair. With proper training, you could achieve up to 85% of normal mobility functions. Zayela felt a dangerous spark of hope ignite within her. When could we begin? Right now, if you'd like, Dr. Arwin replied. The first session would just be fitting the exoskeleton and calibrating the sensors. No actual movement attempts yet. Yes, Zayela said, surprising herself with the eagerness in her voice. Yes, I'd like to start immediately. The fitting process took nearly 2 hours. The exoskeleton required precise adjustments to accommodate Zayela's Zorakian physiology, which differed from human proportions in subtle but significant ways. Dr. Arwin worked with meticulous care, frequently checking with Zayela about comfort and pressure points. The system will learn and adapt to your movements over time, Dr. Arwin explained, as she made final adjustments. Think of it as a partnership rather than a tool. You'll both need to compromise a bit at first. When the fitting was complete, Zayela stared down at her legs, now encased in the sleek, silver exoskeleton. It was lighter than it appeared, conforming to her body like a second skin. Most importantly, it didn't hurt. We won't activate the mobility functions today, Dr. Arwin cautioned. Your neuromuscular system needs time to acclimate to the sensor interfaces. We'll start with basic movements tomorrow, after you've had a chance to get used to wearing it. Zayela nodded, understanding the need for caution even as impatience coursed through her. How long will I need to wear it today? Just 4 hours, Dr. Arwin replied. Then we'll remove it and check for any pressure points or skin irritation. Zorakian dermis is tougher than human skin, but we still need to be careful. As Zayela was preparing to leave the medical bay, the door slid open to reveal Jack, dressed in his duty uniform. He stopped short at the sight of Zayela in the exoskeleton. I'm sorry, he said quickly. I didn't mean to intrude. I was just checking in with Dr. Arwin about... He broke off, clearly not wanting to admit he had been asking about Zayela's progress. It's all right, Commander, Dr. Arwin said with a knowing smile. Lady Zayela has begun the adaptation process for the exochair. We're just finishing the initial fitting. Jack's eyes met Zayela's, and she saw genuine pleasure there. That's wonderful news, he said. How does it feel? Strange, Zayella admitted, but not uncomfortable, not painful. Something passed across Jack's face. Relief, perhaps, or satisfaction. I'm glad to hear it, and I apologize again for interrupting. You're not interrupting, Dr. Arwin assured him. In fact, your timing is perfect. Lady Zayella needs to keep the exoskeleton on for 4 hours, but should avoid sitting in her regular chair during that time to prevent pressure points. Perhaps you could show her around some of the ship's facilities? Walking beside her while she uses her regular chair would be ideal for this first day. Jack looked to Zayella, clearly not wanting to impose. Only if you'd like to. Of course. Zayella considered refusing. The prospect of being seen by the human crew in this half-state, neither fully mobile nor confined to her chair, made her uncomfortable. Yet something in Jack's expression, an earnestness without pity, made her reconsider. Yes, she said finally. I would like to see more of your vessel. Jack's smile was immediate and warm. Excellent. I know just where to start. Their tour began in the ship's arboretum, a vast chamber at the heart of the vessel, where earth plants grew in carefully maintained ecosystems. Towering trees with broad green leaves stretched toward a ceiling that simulated Earth's sky, complete with drifting clouds and changing light patterns. Smaller plants filled the understory, some bearing colorful flowers or fruits. Every Earth vessel of this size contains a living ecosystem, Jack explained as he walked beside Zayella's chair. Partially for oxygen recycling, partially for food production, but mostly for the psychological well-being of the crew. Humans don't do well in sterile, artificial environments for extended periods. Zayella breathed deeply, taking in the rich sense of soil and vegetation. It smells alive, she observed. Javerian vessels are completely synthetic. Biological elements are considered inefficient and potentially contaminating. Different design philosophies, Jack said with a shrug. Neither inherently superior, just adapted to different priorities. As they moved through the arboretum, Zayella noticed human crew members engaged in various activities among the plants. Some tended the vegetation. Others sat reading or conversing in small groups, while a few appeared to be practicing some form of meditative movement. They're not all working, she noted with surprise. Jack chuckled. Recreation is considered essential for human productivity and mental health. Scheduled leisure time is part of every crew member's duty rotation. The concept was alien to Zorakian military doctrine, where every moment was dedicated to function and purpose. Yet, watching the relaxed, focused crew members, Zayella couldn't help but notice their apparent vitality and engagement. Their tour continued through the ship's common areas, the mess hall, recreation facilities, and observation lounges. Everywhere they went, crew members acknowledged Jack with respectful nods, but without the fearful deference Zorakian officers commanded. More surprisingly, they greeted Zayella with the same respectful courtesy, many introducing themselves and expressing pleasure at her presence aboard. Your crew seems very casual, Zayella remarked, as they entered a quieter section of the ship. In some ways, Jack agreed. Earth Alliance maintains military discipline where it matters. Combat situations, emergency responses, chain of command for operational decisions. But we've found that allowing more personal autonomy and informal interaction in day-to-day functions actually improves performance and loyalty. He guided her toward a door marked Observatory Alpha. There's something here I think you might appreciate. The observatory was a circular room with a domed ceiling entirely transparent to space. With the ship currently in regular space rather than hyperspace, the view was spectacular. A vast field of stars surrounding a nearby nebula that painted the darkness with swirls of purple and blue gas. We're passing the Cygnus Nebula, Jack explained. It's one of the most beautiful phenomena in this sector. The room was empty, save for them. The ship's rotation schedule having placed this period in the observatory's night cycle when lighting was dimmed to enhance the view of space. Zayela stared up at the cosmic display, momentarily forgetting her self-consciousness about the exoskeleton. "It's magnificent," she whispered. Jack moved to a control panel on the wall. "Watch this." He adjusted several settings, and suddenly soft music filled the chamber, a complex, flowing melody, unlike anything in Zorakian compositions. "Debussy," Jack said in response to Zayela's questioning look. "An earth composer who tried to capture the impression of natural phenomena in sound. This piece is called Clair de Lune, Moonlight." As the music swelled and ebbed, the nebula seemed to pulse in rhythm, though Zayela knew it was merely an illusion created by the interplay of sound and vision. The effect was nonetheless mesmerizing. "We have nothing like this on Javaria," she said softly. "Music is primarily martial, drums and brass to inspire warriors before battle." "Music serves many purposes for humans," Jack replied, his voice equally quiet in the dimmed observatory. "It can inspire courage, yes, but also express joy, sorrow, longing, hope, the full range of sentient experience." They sat in comfortable silence for several minutes, watching the nebula drift past as the music played. Zayela found herself relaxing, the constant tension she carried beginning to ease. "Why did you really come to my quarters this morning?" she asked suddenly, turning to look at Jack directly. "You weren't looking for Dr. Arwen." Jack met her gaze without evasion. "No, I wasn't. I wanted to see how you were doing after our conversation last night. It seemed to bring up difficult memories for you." His honesty continued to surprise her. A Zorakian officer would never admit to such personal concern. "You didn't need to check on me," she said, though without her usual defensiveness. "I've managed my memories for many years." "I know you have," Jack replied. "That doesn't mean you should always have to manage them alone." The simple statement carried such weight that Zayela found herself momentarily speechless. Before she could formulate a response, a soft chime sounded from Jack's communication device. "Commander Morgan," came a voice. "Priority message from Earth Alliance Command." Jack tapped the device. "Acknowledged. I'll take it in my ready room. Morgan out." He turned to Zayela with an apologetic expression. "Duty calls. Would you like me to escort you back to your quarters first?" "No," Zayela said, surprising herself. "I'd like to stay here a while longer, if that's permitted." "Of course. The observatory is open to all aboard." He hesitated, then added, "I'll check in with you later, if that's all right." Zayela nodded, and Jack departed, leaving her alone with the stars and the haunting earth music. She sat in the darkness, the exoskeleton a comfortable weight around her legs, and allowed herself to simply exist in the moment, not as a shameful secret or a diplomatic pawn, but as a being experiencing beauty. It was, she realized with startling clarity, the first time in 15 years she had felt truly at peace. The message from Earth Alliance Command was not what Jack had expected. Admiral Chen's weathered face filled the screen in his ready room, her expression grave. "Commander Morgan, we've received disturbing intelligence from our sources within the Zorak Empire." She began without preamble. "High Counselor Vren has been actively campaigning among the Imperial Council to have his daughter returned, claiming she was coerced or mentally compromised when she chose to leave with your delegation." Jack felt a cold knot form in his stomach. "That's absolutely false, Admiral. Lady Zayela made her choice freely and explicitly." "I believe you, Commander. But Zorak politics are complex. Vren appears to be using his daughter's departure as leverage in an internal power struggle. He's framing it as a kidnapping to rally nationalist sentiment against the peace process." "What are my orders?" Jack asked, already dreading the answer. Admiral Chen's expression softened slightly. "Officially, Earth Alliance maintains that Lady Zayela requested and received lawful asylum under Galactic Convention statutes. We will not return her against her will under any circumstances. And unofficially? Unofficially, this situation has become more complicated than a simple humanitarian action. Lady Zayela is now a significant political factor in our negotiations with the Empire. Her well-being remains paramount, but you should be aware that her presence aboard Horizon is being closely monitored by multiple factions. Jack nodded, understanding the subtext. I'll keep her informed of the situation. Admiral, she deserves to know that her father is using her as a political tool. Use your judgment, Commander. Our primary mission remains securing a lasting peace with the Zorak Empire, but not at the cost of our principles. Admiral Chen's gaze was steady. How is she adapting to life aboard Horizon? Remarkably well, Jack replied, allowing a note of admiration to enter his voice. She's begun using the adaptive exochair technology, and Dr. Arwin reports excellent neural compatibility. She's also showing increasing willingness to interact with crew members and learn about Earth culture. Good. Keep me updated on her progress, both medical and social. And Jack, the Admiral added, switching to a less formal tone. Be careful. Zorakians are known for holding grudges, and High Counselor Vren has a particularly nasty reputation. He won't let this perceived insult go unanswered. Understood, Admiral. Morgan out. As the screen went dark, Jack leaned back in his chair, mind racing. The peace negotiations had been delicate enough before Zayela entered the picture. Now, they were balanced on a knife's edge, with a young woman's freedom caught in the middle. He needed to tell her about her father's actions. She deserved to know, but how to do so without making her feel like a burden or a political liability? The answer came to him slowly. Treat her with the same respect and honesty he would show any ally. Anything less would be a betrayal of the trust they were beginning to build. With that resolution in mind, Jack left his ready room to find Zayela. Over the following weeks, Zayela's progress with the exochair exceeded even Dr. Arwin's optimistic predictions. What began as simple movements, the ability to stand supported by the exoskeleton's autonomous balancing system, quickly evolved into short walks, then longer ones. By the end of the first month, Zayela could navigate most of the ship's corridors independently, the exoskeleton responding to her thoughts with increasing fluidity. Your neural plasticity is remarkable, Dr. Arwin told her during one evaluation session. The exochair is adapting to you. Yes, but you're also adapting to it, creating new neural pathways to communicate with the system. Zayela, standing beside an examination table rather than sitting in her wheeled chair, felt a surge of pride. How much further can the integration progress? That's difficult to predict, Dr. Arwin admitted. But based on your current trajectory, I believe you could eventually achieve near-natural movement patterns. The exoskeleton would still provide the physical support and locomotion, but the control would feel increasingly intuitive. The possibility was exhilarating. Already, Zayela felt transformed by her increasing mobility. She had begun joining small groups of crew members for meals in the mess hall, participating in cultural exchange sessions in the recreation areas, even assisting the xenobiology team with information about Javarian flora and fauna. Most evenings still found her in Jack's company. However, their conversations had evolved from cautious exchanges to genuine dialogue, covering topics from philosophy to personal history. Jack had shared stories of his military career, both triumphs and failures, while Zayela gradually revealed more about her life in the Imperial Palace. I was not always alone, she told him one evening as they sat in the observatory, now their preferred meeting place. After my mother disappeared, one of her handmaidens, Lyra, continued to visit me in secret. She brought books, recordings of council meetings, news from beyond my rooms. Jack, seated across from her, listened attentively. She sounds brave. She was, Zayela agreed, a familiar grief tightening her throat. Until my father discovered her actions, I never saw her again after that. I was 16. I'm sorry, Jack said quietly. It had become his most common response to her revelations about life under High Counselor Vren's rule. Simple words that nonetheless carried genuine empathy. It taught me a final lesson, Zayela continued. Caring for the disgraced is itself a disgrace in Zorak culture. After Lyra, I refuse to allow anyone close enough to be endangered by association. Jack was silent for a moment, considering her words. And now, he finally asked, aboard Horizon? Zayela looked down at her legs, encased in the silver exoskeleton that had given her back a measure of autonomy. Now, I'm beginning to question many lessons I once accepted as truth. It was as close as she could come to admitting how much her perspective had changed. How much Jack had changed it with his quiet insistence on her inherent value regardless of physical ability. Before Jack could respond, his communication device chimed with an urgent signal. Morgan here, he answered, immediately alert to the priority code. Commander, came the voice of Lieutenant Keller, Horizon's tactical officer. Long-range sensors have detected a Zorak battlecruiser on an intercept course. They're hailing us with diplomatic protocols, but running with weapons charged. Jack stood immediately. Shields up, but no offensive posture. I'm on my way to the bridge. He turned to Zayela, his expression grave. I need to handle this. Please return to your quarters for now. Zayela felt cold dread settle in her stomach. It's about me, isn't it? My father has sent them. Jack hesitated, then nodded. Most likely. We received intelligence several weeks ago that he was pressuring the Imperial Council to demand your return. I should have told you sooner, but you were protecting me, Zayela finished for him. As everyone always has, denying me information for my own good. The hurt in her voice was unmistakable, and Jack winced. You're right. I should have trusted you with the truth immediately. I apologize. His immediate acknowledgement of the error diffused some of Zayela's anger. What will you do now? Maintain our position that you requested asylum legally under the Galactic Convention. Earth Alliance will not return you against your will. His voice carried absolute conviction. But I need to handle the diplomatic exchange carefully to avoid escalation. Zayela nodded, understanding the delicate position her presence had created. I'll return to my quarters. As she activated the exoskeleton to stand, Jack placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. This isn't your fault, Zayela. You have every right to choose your own path. The use of her name without titles or honorifics, something he had only recently begun doing, sent an unexpected warmth through her. Be careful, Jack. My father does not accept defeat gracefully. With that warning, she left the observatory, the exoskeleton carrying her swiftly through the corridors toward her quarters. As she walked, crew members nodded respectfully, but with concerned expressions. Word of the approaching Zorak vessel had clearly spread quickly. Inside her quarters, Zayela paced restlessly, the exoskeleton responding fluidly to her agitation. The viewport showed nothing but stars, the Zorak battlecruiser still too distant to be visible, but she could feel her father's presence approaching like a storm on the horizon. What would happen if the situation escalated to conflict? The Horizon was primarily a diplomatic vessel, with moderate defensive capabilities but limited offensive weapons. A Zorak battlecruiser could reduce it to debris within minutes of concentrated fire. The thought of Jack and his crew, people who had shown her nothing but kindness, dying because of her father's pride, was unbearable. There was, of course, a simple solution: return to Javaria voluntarily. Her father would claim victory, the Horizon would be spared, and the fragile peace process could continue. She would lose her newfound freedom, her growing sense of self-worth, the exoskeleton that had given her mobility. She would return to isolation and shame, perhaps with even greater restrictions after her betrayal. But Jack and the others would be safe. Zayela moved to the communication panel. Her decision made. Before she could activate it, However, a priority alert sounded throughout the ship. All hands, battle stations. This is not a drill. Repeat, all hands to battle stations. Her blood ran cold. Had negotiations already failed? Was an attack imminent? The door to her quarters slid open, without the usual request for entry, revealing Lieutenant Commander Reese, the ship's security chief. Lady Zayela, we need to move you to a secure location immediately. What's happening? She demanded, even as she followed him into the corridor. The Zorak vessel fired a warning shot across our bow, Reese explained grimly, as they moved rapidly through the ship. Commander Morgan is still attempting diplomatic resolution, but we're preparing for all contingencies. He led her to a heavily reinforced section near the center of the ship, the emergency bunker designed to protect key personnel during combat. Inside, several other non-military personnel had already gathered, including Dr. Arwen, who immediately approached Zayela. "Are you all right?" the doctor asked, scanning her quickly for signs of distress. "I'm fine," Zayela assured her. "But this situation is my fault. My father is making his own choices." Dr. Arwen interrupted firmly. "As are you. As is Commander Morgan. No one is responsible for another's actions." Before Zayela could respond, the ship's internal communication system activated with Jack's voice. "Attention all personnel. The Zorak vessel. Immutable Justice has launched boarding shuttles. Prepare for potential intruders in sections 7 through 12. Security teams to assigned positions. This is not a drill." Dr. Arwen's expression tightened with worry. "Boarding action rather than direct assault. They're coming for you, Zayela." "I should surrender myself," Zayela said, the words tumbling out before she could reconsider. "Before anyone is hurt." "Absolutely not," Dr. Arwen replied, with unexpected ferocity. "That's exactly what they want you to think, that their aggression is your responsibility. It isn't." A distant thud reverberated through the ship, followed by the unmistakable sound of emergency bulkhead sealing. "They've breached the outer hull," someone said, voice tight with fear. Dr. Arwen took Zayela's hand, squeezing it reassuringly. "Trust Jack. Trust our security teams. This isn't your first crisis, and it won't be your last." The minutes that followed were a blur of tension and fragmented information. The ship's communication system provided updates on the boarding party's progress. A squad of Zorak warriors, elite Imperial guards, cutting their way through section by section despite the security team's resistance. "They're heading directly for the diplomatic quarters," came one report. "They expected to find Lady Zayela there." "Central Junction secured," reported another voice. 3 casualties. Non-fatal. Zorak forces repelled from Section 9. Throughout it all, Zayela sat motionless, the exoskeleton powered down to conserve energy, her mind racing with guilt and fear. These humans were fighting, risking their lives, to protect her from her own people. It seemed both noble and futile. Then, suddenly, a new voice broke through the tactical chatter on the communication system. A voice Zayela recognized instantly, sending ice through her veins. "Commander Morgan," came the cold, precise tones of High Counselor Vren. "This display of resistance is unnecessary and counterproductive. Simply return my daughter, and your vessel will be permitted to continue its mission unharmed." Jack's response was equally cold. "High Counselor, your daughter requested and received asylum under Article 7 of the Galactic Convention, to which the Zorak Empire is a signatory. She is not property to be returned." "She is a citizen of the Empire and my legal dependent," Vren countered. Her mental state after years of isolation renders her incapable of making such decisions. "I am here as a father concerned for his child's well-being." The blatant hypocrisy of the statement would have been laughable if the situation weren't so dire. Zayela felt something shift inside her, guilt giving way to a slow, burning anger. "My daughter requires specialized care that only Javerian medical facilities can provide," Vren continued, his voice carrying the practiced concern of a skilled politician. "Surely you would not deny her proper treatment out of misguided principle." There was a brief pause before Jack replied, his voice steady. "Lady Zayela has been under the care of our Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Elaine Arwin, who reports significant improvement in her condition using Earth Alliance adaptive technology. If specialized care is your concern, High Counselor, perhaps you would like to speak with Dr. Arwin directly." The suggestion was a clever tactical move, shifting the conversation from political demands to medical evidence, forcing Vren to either engage on factual grounds or reveal his true motives. "I have no interest in your primitive medical opinions," Vren snapped, his diplomatic facade cracking slightly. "Return my daughter immediately, or face the consequences of abducting a member of the Imperial bloodline." Zayela stood abruptly, the exoskeleton powering up in response to her surge of emotion. "I need to speak to him," she said to Dr. Arwin. "This has gone far enough." Dr. Arwin looked uncertain. "Zayela, he's manipulating the situation deliberately. Engaging with him plays into his strategy. Not engaging gives him control of the narrative," Zayela countered. "He's portraying me as mentally incompetent, unable to speak for myself. The only way to counter that is for me to demonstrate otherwise." After a moment's hesitation, Dr. Arwin nodded and moved to the communication panel. "Dr. Arwin to Bridge. Lady Zayela requests to join the negotiation." There was a brief pause before Jack's voice replied, "Understood. Security team en route to escort her safely." Minutes later, Zayela was walking toward the bridge, flanked by 4 armed security officers. The exoskeleton responded fluidly to her movements, lending her a grace and steadiness she could never have achieved in her wheelchair. She had deliberately chosen not to use the hover function, wanting to walk into this confrontation on her own power, however augmented. As the bridge doors slid open, all eyes turned to her. Jack stood at the command center, his posture rigid with tension. On the main view screen, High Counselor Vren's face filled the display, his silver hair immaculately styled, his pale blue skin unmarked by age, thanks to Zorakian life extension technologies, his luminescent patterns glowing with aristocratic intensity. His expression, as he saw Zayela enter, shifted from diplomatic smoothness to momentary shock. His eyes widened at the sight of her standing, moving independently in the Earth Alliance exoskeleton. "Father," Zayela said, her voice clear and steady as she moved to stand beside Jack. "Your concern for my well-being would be more convincing if you had demonstrated any during the 15 years I spent imprisoned in my quarters." Vren recovered quickly, his features arranging themselves into paternal concern. "Zayela, my child, you are clearly confused and manipulated by these humans. Whatever they have told you—" "They have told me nothing but truth," Zayela interrupted, something she had never dared do before. "They have shown me nothing but respect. The device I wear was offered as a choice, not imposed as an obligation. My presence aboard this vessel was requested, not commanded." Her father's expression hardened. "You speak of choice? What do you know of it, sheltered and protected as you have been? The Empire is complex, its politics dangerous. Everything I did was to keep you safe." "Safe?" Zayela repeated, unable to keep the bitterness from her voice. "Is that what you call isolation and shame? Is that what you call dismissing me as worthless to my face? Is that what you call banishing my mother for daring to suggest I deserved an education?" A ripple of shock passed through the bridge crew at her words. Though they maintained professional composure, Jack remained beside her, a silent presence offering support without interference. "You were a child," Vren said dismissively. "You misunderstood much. Now you are being manipulated by Earth Alliance for a political advantage. Return to the immutable justice, and we will discuss these grievances in private, as family should." Zayela felt a cold clarity settle over her. "There is nothing to discuss. I have claimed asylum legally, and I have no intention of returning to Javaria at this time. Vren's expression darkened. You leave me no choice, daughter. If you will not return willingly, I must insist. He looked past her to Jack. Commander Morgan, you have 1 hour to surrender Lady Zayela to my custody, or the immutable justice will open fire on your vessel. There will be no further negotiation. The transmission cut abruptly, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Jack turned to his tactical officer. Status of the boarding party? Contained in Section 11, sir. They appear to be holding position rather than advancing further. They were never meant to succeed, Zayela said quietly. Just to create pressure and confusion while my father made his demands. Jack nodded grimly. A standard Zorak negotiating tactic. Demonstrate force, then offer a seemingly reasonable alternative. He turned to Zayela, his expression softening. You handled that confrontation with remarkable composure. I've had years to rehearse what I would say to him. If ever given the chance, she replied. Though I never imagined it would be under these circumstances. What do you want to do now? Jack asked. The question striking Zayela with its simplicity and significance. No one in her life had ever asked what she wanted in a crisis, only told her what would happen to her. She considered carefully before answering. I will not return to my father's custody, but I also cannot allow your crew to die protecting me. Those aren't the only options, Jack assured her. Earth Alliance has contingency protocols for situations like this. We can transfer you to another vessel through emergency hyperspace jump protocols. The tactical officer interrupted. Sir, the Zorak battlecruiser is moving to block potential jump vectors. They anticipated that response. Jack's expression darkened. Of course they did. Status of our shields. Holding at 92%. Commander. But a direct assault from a vessel of that class would overwhelm them within minutes. Zayela felt the weight of hundreds of lives pressing down on her. These people had shown her kindness, restored her dignity, given her hope. She could not be the cause of their deaths. There must be another way, she said, mind racing. One that allows me to maintain my freedom without sacrificing this ship. Jack studied her with evident respect. I'm open to suggestions. We have, he checked the chronometer, 53 minutes to develop an alternative. Zayela thought of everything she had learned about Earth Alliance, about the Zorak Empire, about herself in these past weeks. An idea began to form, dangerous, perhaps even foolish, but with a certain symmetry that appealed to her newfound sense of self. My father values the appearance of power above all else, she said slowly. He cannot admit defeat publicly without losing face with the Imperial Council. But neither can he afford a direct military confrontation with Earth Alliance that might unite other powers against the Empire. Jack nodded, following her reasoning. He needs a way to back down while claiming victory. Exactly, Zayela confirmed. And I believe I know how to give him that, while still maintaining my freedom and ensuring the safety of this vessel. She outlined her plan quickly, watching Jack's expression shift from concern to cautious consideration. It's risky, he said when she finished. Very risky, if your father doesn't respond as you expect. He will, Zayela assured him. I've spent a lifetime studying his pride and its mechanisms. This approach gives him exactly what he needs. A public narrative that saves face while achieving none of his actual goals. Jack looked to his senior officers, who had been listening intently. Thoughts? It could work, the tactical officer admitted. The psychological assessment fits what we know of High Counselor Vren and Zorak political culture. The medical aspects are feasible, Dr. Arwen added, having joined them on the bridge during the crisis. But Zayela would be placing herself in genuine danger. Less danger than all of you face if the immutable justice opens fire, Zayela pointed out. And this is my choice to make. Jack held her gaze for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Very well. Let's prepare the necessary elements. We have 48 minutes to make this work. 45 minutes later, a message was transmitted to the immutable justice, requesting a final parley before the deadline expired. High Counselor Vren's face appeared on the view screen once more, his expression smug with anticipated victory. "Have you come to your senses, Commander Morgan?" he asked. "I've come to offer an alternative resolution," Jack replied evenly. "One that respects Lady Zayela's rights, while acknowledging your concerns for her well-being." Vren's eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Explain." "Lady Zayela has agreed to demonstrate her mental competence and physical capabilities through traditional Zorak protocols. Specifically, the challenge of validation in the presence of witnesses from both our cultures." The suggestion clearly took Vren by surprise. The challenge of validation was an ancient Zorak custom, rarely invoked in modern times but still legally recognized, whereby an individual whose status or capability was questioned could prove themselves through a public demonstration of skill and judgment. "This is highly irregular," Vren said, though Zayela could see calculation in his eyes. "The challenge is typically reserved for warriors whose courage has been impugned, not for medical cases." "The Zorak Legal Codex makes no such distinction," Zayela said, stepping into view. "Any citizen whose capabilities are questioned may invoke the challenge. You have publicly claimed I am mentally incompetent to make decisions regarding my own welfare. I claim the right to disprove that assertion." Vren's mouth tightened. He was trapped by his own culture's traditions. To refuse the challenge would itself be an admission that his claims were politically motivated rather than genuine concern. "Where would this challenge take place?" he asked cautiously. "In neutral space, between our vessels," Jack replied. "We will extend a containment field large enough for the demonstration. Representatives from both ships will observe via remote sensing, with no weapons permitted in the challenge space." After a long pause, Vren nodded stiffly. "I accept these terms, on one condition. If Zayela fails the challenge, she returns to Javaria immediately, with no further interference from Earth Alliance." "And if she succeeds," Jack countered, "her asylum status is formally recognized by the Zorak Empire, and no further attempts will be made to force her return against her will." Vren's expression revealed his confidence that Zayela would fail. "Agreed. The challenge will commence in 1 hour." The transmission ended. Jack turned to Zayela with concern. "Are you certain about this? The exoskeleton hasn't been tested in zero-gravity conditions. If it malfunctions—" "Then I will adapt," Zayela said with more confidence than she felt. "This is the only way to resolve the situation without bloodshed." Dr. Arwen approached with a medical scanner. "We need to run a full diagnostic on the exoskeleton and make any necessary adjustments for vacuum operation, and you'll need specialized training for zero-G movement." Zayela nodded, following the doctor toward the medical bay. As they left the bridge, she heard Jack issuing orders for the containment field preparation and security protocols. The next hour passed in a blur of preparation. The exoskeleton received additional shielding against radiation and temperature fluctuations. Zayela practiced zero-gravity movement in a simulation chamber, learning how to use the exoskeleton's thrusters for controlled navigation in vacuum. "Remember," Dr. Arwen cautioned, as she helped Zayela into a specially modified spacesuit designed to work with the exoskeleton. "The challenge of validation isn't just about physical capability. It's also a test of judgment and decision-making." "I know," Zayela replied, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "My father expects me to fail because he still sees me as the broken child he locked away. He doesn't know who I've become." Dr. Arwen squeezed her shoulder. "Show him." When the hour was up, Zayela stood in the airlock chamber, fully suited and ready. Jack appeared, also in a spacesuit. "What are you doing?" Zayela asked with surprise. "I'll be monitoring from just outside the containment field," he explained. "Standard procedure for diplomatic challenges. Each party has one observer positioned at the perimeter." Zayela suspected this was not, in fact, standard procedure, but rather Jack's unwillingness to leave her completely alone in potential danger. The realization warmed her, despite her nervousness. "Ready?" he asked. She nodded. "Ready?" The airlock cycled, and Zayela found herself floating in space, the exoskeleton's thrusters automatically stabilizing her position. Before her stretched a spherical containment field, visible as a faint blue shimmer against the black of space. Beyond it, the massive form of the immutable Justice loomed, dwarfing the horizon. A figure emerged from the Zorak vessel's airlock, tall and muscular, clad in the ornate armor of the Imperial Guard. As he entered the containment field, Zayela recognized him with a jolt. Lieutenant Rax, her father's most trusted enforcer and one of the most decorated warriors in the Empire. This was not what she had expected. The challenge of validation typically involved demonstrating skills relevant to the disputed capability. In her case, presumably mental acuity and independent function. Sending a combat specialist suggested her father had altered the parameters. Jack's voice came through her communication system. "Zayela, this doesn't match the agreement. We can call for clarification before proceeding." Zayela considered the situation rapidly. Her father had chosen Rax deliberately, either to intimidate her into withdrawing or to ensure her failure if she continued. Either outcome would serve his purpose. "No," she replied firmly. "I accept the challenge as presented." She activated her thrusters and moved forward into the containment field. Rax watched her approach, his expression visible through his helmet visor, a mixture of contempt and discomfort. Like most Zorakians, he had been conditioned to view disability as shameful, something to be hidden away rather than accommodated. "Lady Zayela," he said formally, as she reached the center of the field. "I am instructed to test your capabilities through the traditional 3 trials of mind, body, and spirit." Zayela nodded. The 3 trials were an ancient format, rarely used in modern times, but deeply embedded in Zorak culture. "I am prepared, Lieutenant Rax." "The trial of mind will test your strategic thinking," Rax announced, producing a small device that projected a holographic game board between them, the complex 3-dimensional pattern of Corvash. A Zorakian strategy game, similar to Earth's chess, but with evolving rule sets. Zayela felt a surge of confidence. During her years of isolation, Corvash had been one of her few entertainments, playing against computer opponents of increasing difficulty. "Beginning position is set," Rax stated. "You move first." The game proceeded rapidly, both players making decisions with minimal hesitation. Rax was clearly a skilled player, employing several advanced strategies that would have overwhelmed most opponents. But Zayela had spent thousands of hours mastering Corvash's intricacies, analyzing its patterns, developing counter-strategies to every known approach. 23 moves in, she executed a sacrifice maneuver that appeared catastrophic but created a subtle advantage. 3 moves later, Rax, focused on immediate tactical gains, missed the strategic implication until it was too late. 5 moves after that, his position collapsed. "Submission," he acknowledged, voice tight with surprise. "The trial of mind is past." Jack's voice came through her private channel. "Well done, stay focused." Rax deactivated the game projection. "The trial of body will test your physical adaptation and response." He produced another device, which released several small spherical drones into the containment field. They began moving in erratic patterns around Zayela. "You must disable all targets without being touched by them," Rax explained. "Each contains a harmless but visible marker that will show contact." Zayela studied the drone's movement patterns, noting their acceleration curves and directional tendencies. The exoskeleton's neural interface allowed her to process this information and respond with precision that would have been impossible without the technology. When the trial began, she moved with fluid grace through the zero-gravity environment. The exoskeleton's thrusters providing perfect control. One by one, she intercepted the drones, pressing their deactivation panels without being touched by their marking appendages. The final drone was faster than the others, clearly programmed to present a greater challenge. Zayela allowed it to approach rapidly, then executed a spinning maneuver that the exoskeleton translated from thought to action in milliseconds. Her hand brushed the deactivation panel as the drone passed, shutting it down before it could mark her suit. Rax's expression was unreadable as he acknowledged, "The trial of body is past." Zayela could feel exhaustion beginning to set in. The exoskeleton, while responsive, required intense concentration to control in zero gravity. But she maintained her focus as Rax prepared the final trial. "The trial of spirit," he announced, "will test your courage and conviction." From a compartment in his armor, he removed what appeared to be a simple crystal sphere, but Zayela recognized it immediately. A truth orb, a rare Zorakian artifact that resonated with brain patterns to detect deception. They were used only in the most significant judicial proceedings, as they were both incredibly valuable and potentially dangerous to the subject. "You will answer 3 questions," Rax stated. "The orb will determine the truth of your responses." Zayela nodded, though uneasiness settled in her stomach. The truth orb would detect not just deliberate lies, but also self-deception, making it impossible to project false confidence or hide genuine doubt. "First question," Rax began. "Do you leave Javaria of your own free will, without coercion from Earth Alliance?" "Yes," Zayela answered without hesitation. The orb glowed green, confirming her truth. "Second question. Do you understand that by rejecting your father's protection, you forfeit your status and privileges as a member of House Vren?" This was trickier, a political trap disguised as a straightforward inquiry. By acknowledging that she forfeited her status, she would be legally severing ties with the imperial bloodline, potentially undermining her future standing if she ever chose to return. "I understand that my father claims this," Zayela responded carefully. "But under imperial law, bloodline status cannot be revoked except by unanimous vote of the High Council or personal renunciation before the Emperor. Neither has occurred." The orb pulsed briefly between green and yellow, before settling on green. The truth. But with complexity, the question hadn't accounted for. Rax's expression tightened. Her knowledge of imperial law had clearly surprised him. The final question would be crucial. "Third question," he said, voice hardening. "Do you believe yourself capable of independent survival without the assistance and protection of either Earth Alliance or the Zorak Empire?" This was the heart of the matter, the question designed to reveal doubt that her father could exploit. Did she truly believe herself capable after 15 years of enforced dependence? Zayela took a deep breath, searching her feelings with unflinching honesty as the truth orb monitored her response. "I believe I am capable of making my own choices and facing their consequences," she said slowly. "I believe that independence is not the absence of support, but the freedom to choose which support to accept. I believe I can survive and thrive by my own judgment, accepting help when I deem it beneficial rather than when others impose it as necessary." The orb glowed brightest green yet, pulsing with the resonance of absolute truth. Rax stared at it for a long moment before saying stiffly, "The trial of spirit is past. The challenge of validation is complete." Relief flooded through Zayela, though she maintained her composure. She had done it, demonstrated her competence by her culture's own standards, in full view of witnesses from both ships. "Return to your vessel, Lady Zayela," Rax said formally. "By the ancient laws of Zorak, your status as a self-determining individual is confirmed." As Zayela turned to leave the containment field, Rax added in a lower voice, meant for her alone, "Your father underestimated you. He will not make that mistake again." The warning was clear, but Zayela refused to let it diminish her victory. "Then perhaps he will begin to see me as I am, rather than as he assumed me to be." She exited the containment field, where Jack waited to escort her back to the Horizon's airlock. Once inside and repressurized, they removed their helmets. "That was remarkable," Jack said, his expression filled with admiration. "Especially your response to the final question." Zayela felt a flush of pride. "I spoke only truth. The orb cannot be deceived." "I know," Jack replied. "That's what makes it remarkable." As they made their way back to the bridge, reports came in that the immutable justice was powering down weapon systems and preparing to depart. High Counselor Vren had accepted the outcome of the challenge, at least for now. Dr. Arwen met them at the medical bay, insisting on checking Zayela's vital signs and the exoskeleton systems after the zero-gravity exposure. As the doctor worked, Zayela found herself contemplating what would come next. The immediate crisis had been resolved, but the larger questions remained. Where would she go? What would she do with her newly affirmed freedom? How would she define herself beyond daughter of Vren or the paralyzed princess? For the first time in her life, these questions filled her with excitement rather than dread. The possibilities stretched before her like the star fields visible from the observatory, vast, mysterious, and filled with potential. Later that evening, after the immutable justice had departed and the Horizon resumed its diplomatic mission, Zayela found Jack in the observatory. He stood by the viewport, gazing out at the stars, his posture suggesting deep thought. "Credit for your thoughts?" she asked, using an Earth expression he had taught her. Jack turned with a smile. "I was thinking about next steps. Earth Alliance Command has confirmed your asylum status. You're free to settle on Earth or any allied world." Zayela moved to stand beside him, the exoskeleton humming softly with each step. "And what would I do on these worlds? I have no profession, no practical experience outside palace walls. You have intelligence, determination, and a unique perspective on Zorak culture that could be invaluable in diplomatic contexts," Jack pointed out. "Or you could pursue education in any field that interests you. Earth universities would welcome you." "Those are practical options," Zayela acknowledged. "But they still define me in relation to my origins or my potential utility." She turned to face him directly. "What would you do, Jack, if you were in my position?" He considered the question seriously. "I think I'd want time to explore, to discover what truly interests me when there are no expectations to fulfill. Maybe visit different worlds, experience different cultures, before deciding where to settle." The idea resonated with something deep inside Zayela. After a lifetime of confinement, the thought of exploration, physical and intellectual, held powerful appeal. "I believe I would like that," she said softly. "To discover myself through discovery of the universe." Jack smiled. "It could be arranged. Earth Alliance has research vessels that welcome civilian specialists for extended missions. With your knowledge of Zorakian biology and culture, you'd be a valuable addition to any xenocultural expedition." "Would you be on such a vessel?" Zayela asked, before she could reconsider the question. A complicated expression crossed Jack's face. "My current assignment with the Diplomatic Corps runs another 3 months. After that..." He hesitated. "I've been offered command of the explorer vessel Pathfinder for its mission to the Cygnus expansion. 5 years surveying newly accessible star systems." "That sounds like a worthy command," Zayela said, ignoring the strange pang of disappointment she felt. "It is," Jack agreed. "Though explorer vessels also carry civilian specialists, the Pathfinder will have a xenobiology research team studying newly discovered ecosystems." The implication hung in the air between them. An opportunity, not directly offered but made visible as a possibility. "I would need significant training before qualifying for such a position," Zayela noted, her mind already calculating what would be required. 3 months might be sufficient for preliminary qualification, with continued education during the mission, Jack suggested, his tone carefully neutral despite the hope in his eyes. Zayela found herself smiling. Then perhaps we should discuss what that training would entail. The conversation shifted to practical matters, curriculum requirements, adaptation of Earth educational materials to Zorakian learning styles, potential mentors among the Horizon's scientific staff. But beneath the practicalities ran a current of shared excitement, the recognition of a path forward that neither had anticipated but both found compelling. 3 months later, the Horizon approached Earth, its diplomatic mission complete. The peace treaty between Earth Alliance and the Zorak Empire had been signed, establishing boundaries and protocols that would hopefully prevent future conflicts. High Counselor Vren had maintained a cold formality throughout the final negotiations, acknowledging Zayela's legal status, but making no attempts at reconciliation. Zayela stood in her quarters, packing the few possessions she had accumulated during her time aboard. The exoskeleton had become an extension of herself, responding to her thoughts with such fluidity that she sometimes forgot it wasn't part of her natural body. Dr. Arwen had gifted her the device officially, along with maintenance tools and upgraded components that would serve her for years to come. A chime at her door announced Jack's arrival. He entered with a data tablet in hand, his expression uncharacteristically nervous. "Final approval came through," he said without preamble. "You've been accepted as a civilian specialist aboard Pathfinder. Departure is scheduled for next month, after crew rotation and final provisioning." Zayela felt a surge of excitement mixed with trepidation. "And my asylum status?" "Permanently confirmed. You'll have Earth Alliance citizenship as of tomorrow, with all associated rights and protections." He hesitated. "There's also this." He handed her the tablet, which displayed a formal message from the Zorak Imperial Council. Zayela read it with growing astonishment. "They've restored my imperial stipend and right of return," she said, looking up at Jack in confusion. "Why would they do this after all that's happened?" "Politics," Jack suggested. "Your challenge of validation was widely reported throughout the Empire. You've become something of a symbol to progressive factions who seek to reform the treatment of those with physical differences. The Council is likely trying to prevent you from becoming a rallying point for opposition." Zayela considered this. "Or perhaps some on the Council genuinely recognize the injustice of my treatment." "Perhaps," Jack agreed, though his tone suggested skepticism. "Either way, it gives you additional options and security." Zayela placed the tablet on a nearby table. "My decision remains the same: Pathfinder and the Cygnus expansion." Jack's smile was immediate and warm. "I hoped you'd say that." After a moment's hesitation, he added, "Zayela, these past months, working with you, watching you reclaim your independence, have been—" He paused, searching for words. "Unexpected," she suggested, her own feelings a complex tangle she was still learning to navigate. "Transformative," he corrected. "For both of us, I think." Zayela nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. Their relationship had evolved from rescuer and rescued to colleagues to something neither of them had fully defined. A connection based on mutual respect and growing affection. 5 years exploring unknown worlds, she mused. Plenty of time to discover what comes next. "For both of us," Jack agreed, reaching out tentatively. After a moment's hesitation, Zayela took his hand, the simple human gesture of connection, feeling both alien and right. Tomorrow would bring Earth, with its unfamiliar gravity and atmosphere, its billions of inhabitants, its countless cultures and customs to learn. Beyond that lay Pathfinder and the vast unknown of unexplored space. The journey would be challenging, the adjustment continuous, the outcome uncertain. But uncertainty no longer frightened Zayela as it once had. She had faced her father's rage, her culture's prejudice, and her own deepest doubts, and emerged stronger for the experience. Whatever came next, she would face it standing on her own terms, walking a path of her own choice. And for the first time in her life, she would not walk it alone. 1 year later, The explorer vessel Pathfinder drifted in orbit around a previously uncharted world, in the Cygnus expansion. In the ship's main laboratory, Zyella bent over a specimen analysis station, the exoskeleton responding to her movements with perfect synchronization as she adjusted the scanner settings. Preliminary results suggest adaptive bioluminescence, she reported to the research team gathered around the lab. The fungal colonies respond to specific sound frequencies by altering their light patterns, possibly a form of communication with the avian analog species we observed in the upper canopy. Dr. Cato, the expedition's senior xenobiologist, examined the data with evident excitement. Extraordinary. An interspecies symbiosis mediated through light and sound. Your observations in the field were crucial to making this connection. Specialist Vren. Zyella acknowledged the compliment with a nod, still unaccustomed to professional recognition after a lifetime of being overlooked. The past year had been a continuous process of adaptation, learning Earth scientific protocols, adjusting to the rhythms of an explorer vessel, discovering her own strengths in field research. The exoskeleton had proven invaluable in the work, allowing her to navigate challenging terrain that would have been inaccessible otherwise. She had continued to modify it with Dr. Arwen's remote guidance, adding specialized appendages for sample collection and analysis, improving its environmental adaptability for different planetary conditions. As the research team dispersed to their various stations, Zyella completed her analysis report and transmitted it to the ship's central database. A year of consistent, valuable contributions had earned her the respect of the predominantly human crew. No one now questioned her presence or capabilities. She was simply Specialist Vren, the xenobiologist with unique insights into non-human physiological adaptations. Her communicator chimed with a message from Jack, requesting her presence on the observation deck when her shift ended. They had maintained a professional relationship aboard Pathfinder, Jack careful not to show favoritism despite their growing personal connection. The crew had nonetheless recognized the special bond between them, accepting it with the matter-of-fact tolerance typical of long-range explorer teams. When Zyella arrived at the observation deck 2 hours later, she found it empty, save for Jack, who stood by the viewport watching the sunset over the unexplored world below. The amber light of the system's star painted the atmosphere with streaks of gold and crimson, highlighting mountain ranges and vast forests that no human or Zorakian had ever walked. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Jack said as she joined him. "It reminds me of Javaria's southern continent at equinox," Zyella replied, "though the vegetation patterns are entirely different." Jack smiled at the comparison. "Ever the scientist?" "Not always," Zyella countered softly. "Sometimes just a traveler, appreciating the view." They stood in comfortable silence, watching darkness creep across the planet's surface. Bioluminescent patterns emerged in the growing night, evidence of the very phenomenon Zyella had been studying. "I received a communication from Earth Alliance Command today," Jack said eventually. "The Zorak Empire has requested a scientific exchange program. They're particularly interested in adaptive technology for differently abled citizens." Zyella raised an eyebrow. "That's unexpected." "Apparently your success has sparked something of a cultural reassessment," Jack explained. "Not universal by any means, but significant enough that the Imperial Council can no longer ignore it. They specifically requested information about the exoskeleton technology. The implications were staggering. Zorakian culture had viewed physical disability as shameful for centuries, hiding away those who didn't meet their standards of perfection. The idea that this might be changing, even incrementally, because of her example, was difficult to process. "What did you tell them?" she asked. "That the technology exchange would need to be negotiated through proper diplomatic channels," Jack replied, "and that the most qualified person to oversee such an exchange would be the individual with direct experience of both cultures and technologies." Zyella turned to face him fully. "Me?" Jack nodded. If you're interested, it would mean returning to Javaria eventually, though not immediately. The preliminary work could be done from Earth, or even aboard Pathfinder via communication relays. The prospect of returning to her homeworld stirred complex emotions. Fear. Certainly, memories of isolation and shame remained vivid, but also a strange sense of rightness, of completing a circle begun when she first left aboard Horizon. I would not return as my father's daughter, she said firmly, but as Earth Alliance's representative, with full diplomatic status and protection. Absolutely, Jack assured her. No one is suggesting otherwise. This would be an official diplomatic and scientific mission, with you as the key specialist because of your unique qualifications. Zayela considered the opportunity. How many others like her might still be hidden away in Zorakian society, denied the chance to contribute their minds because of physical limitations? What might it mean to them, seeing technology that offered independence rather than painful corrections of perceived flaws? I would want to establish clear parameters, she said thoughtfully, including the right to speak directly with potential recipients of the technology, not just officials. Jack smiled. I expected nothing less. We can draft a preliminary proposal together, if you decide to pursue this. Zayela gazed back at the planet below, its night side now glittering with the communication patterns of a non-human ecosystem that had evolved in isolation, finding its own unique solutions to survival. I will consider it, she said, but not until our current mission is complete. There are too many discoveries waiting for us here. Agreed, Jack replied. After a moment's hesitation, he added, whatever you decide about the Zorak proposal, I want you to know I'm proud of what you've accomplished this past year. Not just the scientific contributions, impressive as they are, but the way you've adapted to every challenge without compromising who you are. The words warmed Zayela deeply, coming from Jack, who had seen her at her most vulnerable and never once pitied her. They carried special weight. I had an excellent example to follow, she said softly, reaching for his hand in the human gesture that had become natural between them. Someone who showed me that compassion and strength are not opposing forces, but complementary ones. Jack's fingers intertwined with hers. We learned that together, I think. As night fully claimed the planet below, its bioluminescent life forms created patterns of increasing complexity, different species communicating across evolutionary boundaries, finding harmony in diversity. Zayela thought of the journey that had brought her here, from isolation to connection, from shame to pride, from passive acceptance to active choice. The path ahead remained uncertain, with challenges she couldn't yet imagine. Returning to Javaria would mean confronting her past directly, including her father and the culture that had deemed her worthless. But she would not face those challenges as the person who had left in shame aboard the Horizon. She would face them as specialist Zayela Vren of Earth Alliance, respected scientist, valued crew member, and beloved companion. Whatever came next, those truths would remain constant, hard-won identities that no one could take from her. The Zorakian princess who had been abandoned for her perceived flaws had found her place among the stars, not despite her differences, but through them. And in doing so, she had begun to change not only her own story, but the stories possible for others like her. It was, Zayela reflected as she stood beside Jack, watching the living light of an unexplored world, the greatest discovery of all.